Well, good day, folks. Welcome to the MB Wildman channel. On today's video, I'm going to show you an excerpt from a DVD series called Focus on Trapping. It was designed here in Canada, and it was designed to teach people or show people the proper methods for trapping, how to do it, how to handle the fur, all of those things. Great information for the beginner. Also great for the experienced trapper that wants just a little bit of a refresher or some new ideas for sets or anything like that. If you haven't yet subscribed to the MB Wildman channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We certainly do appreciate the support. And if you like the videos, feel free to comment. So without further ado, here we go. Focus on trapping.
If trappers carefully follow the recommendations that will be made in this video, the otter traps that they set in the future will be efficient, humane, and selective. The trapper first finds a narrow part of a stream where the water is flowing just fast enough to prevent it from freezing. If the current is too fast, it could spring the trap. The trapper then clears away any ice that has formed. The set we will see can be used for several years. The water should be deep enough to allow 1 to 2 inches under the trap so that the trigger will work properly. If the water is too shallow, the trapper digs a hole in the stream bed. It is important to use only dry wood in trap sets. Green wood or spruce branches can spoil the animal's fur and can also make the otter wary. The trapper therefore chooses a log about 5 or 6 inches in diameter. He cuts it to fit exactly across the stream. This log has to be quite solid, as the trapper is going to hammer 3 nails into it. Usually, 3-inch flathead nails are used. The trapper hammers them in the form of a triangle to hold the upper part of the trap. The distance between the 2 nails at the base of the triangle depends on the size of the trap. They will be 5 to 6 inches apart if the Conibear 220 is used. The 3rd nail, placed halfway between the other 2, determines the height of the triangle and thus the opening of the trap mouth, which will be about 1.5 to 2 inches wide. To hold the trap securely in place, the nails must be driven in at an angle of about 20 degrees inside the trap jaws and should never be more than 1 inch out of the wood. The trap used is the Conibear 220, a trap especially recommended for otter. If trappers are setting traps in places where they suspect there may also be beavers, they use a Conibear 280, which is effective for both otter and beaver. Certain safety precautions must be observed. Whenever traps are handled, trappers must make sure that the safety hooks are set on the springs. The safety gripper must also be used with Conibear type traps. If trappers don't follow these safety rules, they risk having the trap close on their fingers, causing injuries that are sometimes quite serious. The trapper should always use rubber gloves when working underwater. Many neglect this basic precaution and end up years later with hands twisted with arthritis. The trapper then makes sure the dimensions of the triangle are right. He opens the trap, places it on the nails, and closes it. If the tension on the trap is too great, he readjusts the position of the nails with his axe. Remember that the nails are there to hold the trap in place and not to give it so much tension that it doesn't work properly. Before setting the trapper adjusts the position of the trigger, which in this case is on the bottom of the trap. Before lowering the trap into the water, the trapper very carefully removes the safety hooks from the springs. The safety gripper is also removed. The trap should be set so that the trigger is on the bottom to ensure that the animal will be caught by the net. The trapper stabilizes the trap underwater by placing dry sticks in each of the springs, which are then driven into the stream bed. They will also direct the otter into the center of the trap. He then uses branches to block any other places in the channel that the otter could use to avoid the trap. The last, but not least important step is to attach the Conibear chain to a stick which is driven firmly into the stream bed. Since water levels can fluctuate, many traps are lost because trappers have neglected to attach them to something other than the crosslog. There is still one necessary final touch. Knowing that otters are very observant, the trapper uses grasses or branches to camouflage the parts of the trap that are above water, such as wire, the chain, and anything else that might appear unusual to the animal. Before leaving the set, the trapper makes a final inspection to be sure that everything has been done correctly. Sometimes in trapping, just a simple detail can make the difference between success and failure. Otters are often found near beaver dams. The trappers are going to place a drowning set on one of these dams. The first step is to find the place in the dam where the main runoff from the pond is. This is the passage through which the otter glides, and is thus the place where the trapper will set the trap. If the surface of the pond is frozen, he breaks the ice at the spot he has chosen to place the drowning set. This set consists of a pole that is weighted at the bottom. To work properly, the water must be at least 4 feet deep. The trapper wires the weight to the bottom of the pole. This is the strongest kind of anchoring system. This weight should weigh at least 30 pounds. An experienced trapper will have brought an empty burlap bag in which to put the anchor weight. If the pole is not well anchored, the trapped otter will drag the trap to the side of the pond. In places where the stream bed is very muddy, instead of using a weight, the pole can be driven in firmly. The trapper attaches a strong wire, preferably 14 gauge, to the bottom of the pole. This wire will hold the trap. near the place where he's going to set the trap, the trapper must also drive an anchor stick into the shore. The other end of the wire will be wound around this stick. All of this must be installed very securely. An Adams slide lock or any other approved lock is then slipped onto the wire. He makes sure the wire is taut and that the lock is set up in the right direction. He checks to see if everything is working properly. For this set to work efficiently, the Adams slide lock must be directly attached to the fourth link in the trap chain. For this set, the trapper uses a number 3 or number 4 long spring Victor trap. Before placing the trap under the water, he makes sure that the pan is at the same level as the jaws. If the pan is too high, the otter will spring the trap without getting caught. The trap is set flat near the center of the water slide or opening in the dam, and the wire is tightened and attached to the anchor stick. You must make sure that the jaws are placed facing the current. One last step is left. To make sure that the otter will be guided toward the trap and be captured by the foot, the trapper drives sticks into the stream bed on either side of the set. This is what the completed set looks like. The trap, chain, and lock, which have already been treated, will be submerged under 3 to 4 inches of water so that they won't freeze, which could render the set useless. Professional trappers visit their traps every day because otter hairs have a tendency to singe. It is not possible to discuss otter trapping without mentioning the animal's habit of visiting old beaver lodges. They are thus ideal sites for making sets. The technique used is simple and is called a ladder set. All you do is set a trap at the entrance to the lodge. The ladder is made of crossbars attached to 2 parallel poles on which the trapper places a Conibear 220. Especially recommended for otter. The trap is placed so that it can be lowered directly in front of the lodge entrance. The trapper must also make sure that the trigger is on the lower part of the Conibear, pointed up to cover the maximum amount of space in the trap opening. Don't forget that the use of the safety gripper is recommended anytime a Conibear is handled. First, though, the entrance has to be found. The trapper uses a curved stick to feel around under the water. He knows he has found the entrance when he feels the stick go deeply into an opening about 1 foot square. Before lowering the set down to the entrance, the trapper must be sure that the only passageway in the ladder is through the opening of the trap. There is one final precaution. Even though the ladder set is fairly heavy, it is always a good idea to attach it to a branch or a tree. The ladder was the first set used with the Conibear when this trap came on the market. The final trapping set for otter is the baited Conibear. The ideal location for this set is at the foot of rapids, where a natural pool usually forms. This is where fish generally feed and spawn. Again, the trapper uses a Conibear 220. If the trap isn't new, make sure the springs are still working well and are still as strong as they should be. The trapper pushes a dry stick about 2 inches in diameter into the 2 springs, making sure to leave some space between the springs and the stick. The 2 springs are then wired. The trapper checks to see that the trigger is functioning properly. Then the Conibear chain is attached to the top of the stick so that it doesn't bob around in the current, accidentally springing the trap. Before baiting the trap, the use of the safety gripper is strongly recommended to avoid unfortunate accidents. The bait is usually fresh fish or an artificial lure. The trapper positions the fish on the trigger so that it looks as natural as possible, with the head facing the current as if it were swimming or spawning at the bottom of the water. To create this impression, he puts the trigger in the mouth of the fish and brings it back out at the base of the tail. The side of the trap must be placed facing the current. The trapper then drives the stick firmly into the bed of the water course where the rapids end and the pool begins. Not too far from the rapids so that the ice doesn't render the set useless, but not too close either, as the force of the current could spring the trap. Don't forget to attach the stick to a branch, tree, or stump on the shore if you don't want to lose your traps and your catches.